It's Tuesday, the 19th of April, 10:43 a.m. Heading out of the office, going to a new property that we just picked up. Signed a lockbox so I can put it on the market, and had a property management committee meeting at the Board of Realtors this morning, so I was out of the office most of the morning. Took care of a few priority emails right away, and I've got a few things that I need to follow up on when I get back into the office regarding some of the hail damage insurance claims and such, but right now pretty well caught up and pretty good about things. So the last few days, last week, I haven't felt well. I really felt like I was in a bad spot. Really felt like I was in, I don't know, I really can't explain it. And it's affected me for the last several weeks. And I made mention yesterday that I read something about some astrological changes, some planetary alignments and such that I had come across, which I always try to take that into account when I feel something, because I try to understand what the influences are on my life, on my body especially, and why I feel the way I do when I feel it. And generally I can trace it back to a specific source or a specific event or circumstance, something that's going on in my life that will have an influence on how I feel and my quality of life. And yesterday it just seemed to me again that it was just a feeling of emptiness, a feeling of dissatisfaction, of being unhappy, and I didn't find a way to overcome it. I didn't find a way to make a move to generate happiness in my life, that I was failing at my task. And I spent a lot of my mental focus locked into that idea yesterday, and what I can do to make changes, and what the choices I have made so far have led to, and where I can go from here. And a lot of things occurred to me. One, I made a drastic decision, or we did, to pick up everything and relocate to Texas. It was fantastic. And I've had this job since I got here. And there's a certain amount of guilt that I'm carrying right now associated with the feelings that I'm having. The feelings that this job is no longer conducive to what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to leave that right there, and I'm going to jump and say also that when we made that choice, we really didn't have much to lose. And I've mentioned this several times, that I've taken some risk, I've made some gambles based on principle alone in my life. And I stand behind those. I have no regrets.
Incoming call from Boardwalk Mobile Press.
Hello?
Hey,
Yeah.
do you know on Mellon Zane, is the owner planning on back charging the water usage to like number 1 or number 4, or are they just going to start paying it in May?
At this point, there was tremendous water usage, and they think it was due to the construction people there, and that's still kind of up in the air. I don't know what is going to come of that. At this point, I do not think so. The only one that I can see possibly being back charged would be Unit 1, because they were in there for a full month prior to all this and had water usage that they could be charged for. But at this point, I don't know that we're going to be charging choices back then, and over the times, I really had very little to lose. It was with the exception of when I turned 30 and everything fell apart, and I lost a good job and had 2 houses and 2 cars and was married and ended up getting separated and filing for bankruptcy and giving up the house and the car that I had that was the newest of them. I lost a lot then, and it was a circumstance. It was based on principle that I made some choices, and I let my emotions really dictate. And it was really, I wasn't happy, and there was a lot of reasons that I wasn't happy, and it was personal, professional, spiritual. I mean, it was a multitude of things that came together to create that situation. So I learned from that experience and modified how I live my life and approach and view things from that. And it was for the betterment of my existence. So now I find myself in a situation where I'm dissatisfied with my job. My job is not giving me the fulfillment that I need, and it's strictly a financial decision to continue on with it. And I've gone back and forth with that of how I can change my perception of that to make it more worthwhile. And one of the biggest things is the perks that I get from Steve. He's very generous, and I've mentioned that numerous times. And he's always got something good or something beneficial waiting for you down the road, which is nice, which is really what's helped me maintain as long as I have. But backtracking even just a little bit more, as I've said over the last week or couple of weeks, I really couldn't pinpoint the circumstances that were causing me to feel so unhappy. I mean, yes, I'm not completely satisfied with my job, but wasn't the main driving force behind my dissatisfaction, my unhappy state of mind. It felt like it was coming more from an exterior source, and I really have been bogged down in it. I've really tried to look at it. I've tried to put a finger on it, but have not been able to. The only reason I'm bringing it up now is because I really felt some of that pressure lift this morning, and I don't know why, I don't know how, but it is important that I talk about that it did happen. So regardless of what I've done over the last couple of weeks, I just really have not been able to shake that funk and that just anxious, unhappy, really almost miserable feeling. And even the things that I do that I enjoy were not bringing the satisfaction that they normally would. And the things that bother me were bothering me infinitely more than they probably would have. So, and again, and I've gone through periods of like this in my life where it just feels like physically I'm being constricted. It's hard to breathe, and I really can't associate it with any other kind of event or circumstance going on in my life, and nothing else has changed. You know, there isn't anything that's different in my diet, there isn't anything different that's in my relationships, there isn't anything else different that I could attribute that to. So I have to start looking at unseen forces, which again, I come back down to things of more of a universal nature, of planetary alignments. There's always going to be the movement of energy, and there's going to be times, it's to me common sense, that the way the physical world is set up, the way we perceive it, there's always going to be influential factors in magnetism, and you know, and I can't even begin to list all the different possibilities in physics that could have an impact on the human anatomy and physiology. And I have to start to think that over the last few weeks that we've been in don't follow, or I do believe that the movements of the planets and stars and the way that our universe is set up, I definitely believe that it can play an influential role on us as human beings, but I don't monitor it and I don't track it and actively keep tabs on it and how that's going to affect us. But I definitely can feel the results of it when it happens, and I really feel that is what has happened. And somewhere overnight last night something shifted, and I woke up this morning and I did not want to get out of bed as usual. It was a very difficult transition for me this morning. I wanted to stay asleep, but part of it was because I think like I said, that shift happened overnight, and I was experiencing the results in my dream state, and I was starting to feel relief from some of the pressure, and me mentally was associating sleeping with that relief, because it's been so long, several, I mean, it's a relative term, so long, and there's that pressure, even after a couple hours, couple days, couple weeks, seems like an eternity. So what I was experiencing over the last couple weeks and the impact it has had on me seemed like it was lifting overnight. My dream state shifted, and I shifted into a new dream genre, new dream category, which had a feeling associated with it, which was a relief from pain, really. And when I woke up, I wanted to go back to that, because I was very much appreciative of that shift. But once I woke up and started to become aware and transition back into more of a conscious state, I realized that something had changed. It wasn't just the benefits of a dream state or sleeping. And I'm going to leave that at that while I fill up the tank really quick. And I'll go ahead and pause this, I guess. Alright, so task complete. We're back on the road again. So, now that I'm several hours into the day and feeling a release of the pressure that I was feeling, let's see, I guess I'm going to go this way. I'm looking at things through a new set of eyes, a new perception, new perspective. And part of it is carryover from last night, because I spent a lot of time, even though I was still in that kind of restricted state last night, I really started looking at my life, the choices that I've made, the decisions that I've made, the state that I'm in currently, or definitely was in yesterday, of being unhappy, and not just unhappy, but bordering on miserable, and I have been for weeks now. And how did I get to this situation, and what can I do to change it? And one of the things I started looking at was, again, the choices that I've made, the risks that I've taken in my life, the success I've had over the last 5 years since we decided to really make a change and pursue and actively pursue happiness, being happy. And the choices that we made brought us to a level of happiness that I've been extremely pleased with, which is no longer the case. And so I've been thinking about how I've been feeling the last couple of weeks, and I mentioned this just a little bit ago, I isolated a certain amount of guilt, and I can't say this enough, guilt is one of the things that will kill you quicker than anything. And why did I feel guilty? Because I made these choices to pursue this path, to achieve happiness, and I've been successful with it, but I'm no longer adequate. It's not fulfilling my needs, and I feel guilty about changing. For one, I feel guilty about shifting my commitment, because I made a commitment to Steve, to Boardwalk, to perform this job in exchange for a salary, and I've been doing it for several years, and it has provided me with, well, basically everything that I currently have. And I feel a certain amount of guilt associated with considering changing, moving on. But I'd remind myself that nothing is permanent, nothing is forever, and you can take a path for whatever period of time, and it may be extremely beneficial, maybe the most beneficial path that you can take, but eventually that path will come to an end, and you will have to start a new path. And I feel like right now, especially from today and feeling that pressure lifted, even though I was able to come to this conclusion last night, still in that state of feeling terrible, that I need to forgive myself that guilt and understand that I can make a change, and probably should. And the reason that I've been so heavily affected with dissatisfaction and being unhappy recently is because it's more of a signal. I mean, it's the way we receive communication from ourselves, from the universe, from whatever. You'll get an inclination that it's time for a change, and you'll get ideas on how and what to do that. And the longer you go before actually committing to or making that change, the more intense the signals get. So this is, from my perspective right now, what I'm seeing is that over the last few weeks, it's really been intensified, because it's basically just speaking louder. It's gone from a whisper to a yell. And then I start thinking about the fear that's involved with it, and almost as bad as guilt is fear, I would say, maybe just behind that. And it's fear of failure, one, fear that I may pursue another route and not be as successful as I have been. I have pursued this current path that I'm on now. I've been involved in property management, doing this job, working for Boardwalk for nearly 5 years, and it's been very beneficial to me. I've actually gained much more in my life over the last 5 years than I have any other time, probably more than any combination of times in my life. And I am extremely thankful for that, and I have to remember that, but I can't be afraid to move on. So and I came to that last night, and I felt a most of the time, I would probably be able to maintain a certain level of happiness and be content. And I think everybody, like I said, makes that choice where, how far do you want to push yourself? What limits do you want to reach? And at what point do you say, all right, well, I've pushed it. I'm not going to push it anymore. I'm just going to be happy with what I have and live out the rest of my life. I have more of a grand romantic notion of my potential than most. And to me, it would be a waste to give in. So I need to continue to push forward, especially considering what I'm creating here. Because what I'm trying to do is create a path for others to follow, a motivational tool to push people beyond that comfortable level of complacency that they will eventually reach, that is short of what their true potential is. And so what steps do I make? And I've run several things through my head. Part of what I don't like, obviously, is and I talk about it all the time, is clock time. How much clock time I spend doing things and then having a specific clock time designated for work. That's a soul killer for me. It's really hard for me to deal with, and it affects everything I do, and I have to spend a lot of time adjusting my perception and perspective to see past that. So flexibility and freedom in scheduling would be one of the key things that I need to do. I want to be able to continue doing the things that I'm doing right now, making these recordings. Like I said, I just started doing some woodworking and creating these wands, which I'm almost obsessed with right now. Just as far as on a variety of different levels, but again, for another time. I want to be able to continue to take vacations. I want to be able to continue to go out to eat. So I want to be able to get flexibility in scheduling and be able to do the things I want to do when I want to do them. And that includes work. So I've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort in this industry now for the last nearly 5 years. And part of me thinks that it would be a waste or a shame to throw that away. So I have a real estate license and I can work with that. I don't want to, like I said, I feel a certain amount of guilt in walking away from Boardwalk and property management altogether, but how could I generate some kind of a hybrid position, and would Steve even be willing to work with me on that, to be able to create a way that I could still be beneficial to his company and pursue my own endeavors on the same route. One thing that hit me yesterday at the end of the day was I hate, and I mean hate, sitting at a desk. When he first asked me if I would be interested, when we first moved here and I was applying for restaurant management positions and chef positions and getting interviews, he's like, hey, I've got a property management position open. We had taken a tour of his office. I had spent some time in his office prior to that and knew kind of what they did and how they did and what the environment was like. I was like, my initial response was, I don't think I can sit behind a desk all day. Now, fortunately for me, my job allows me to go out and do this, drive around, go to properties, so I don't spend as much time behind a desk as I did when I was an assistant, or that the assistants do now, which is great because it's given me the ability to be a little bit more flexible with that. But it hit me yesterday as I was going through the day and I was trying to pinpoint things that I like and don't like, and what makes me happy and what makes me unhappy, so that I can figure out a way to be happy a higher percentage of the time. And I really hadn't been in touch with happiness over the last few weeks, and I really wanted to get back into that, and I wanted to maintain that. So I was, again, specifically trying to identify things, and I was sitting at my computer and I was like, even though Steve spent hundreds of dollars on ergonomic office chairs, which have made a huge difference on my back since we've done that, basis that are having an effect on my body and my health, and I need to eliminate them. So I thought about shifting into just showing properties. I don't know that I can make the same kind of money that I make with my salary now just showing properties, so I would have to do other things. Obviously, this is intended to evolve into a revenue-generating situation for me. These recordings and being able to speak to people and generate products that can be purchased in the line of books, tapes, videos, what have you, all along that line. So there's all kinds of things that I could do, but what is the most realistic and easiest step to take, which is what I've been trying to identify. And to me, what I've come down to is probably coming up with some kind of hybrid independent contractor role associated with Boardwalk, some kind of a showing agent / property inspector, because I do enjoy doing that, and we have the software and we have the system and the tools to do that. And I may sit down with Steve after he gets back from India next week and talk about the possibility of doing that. On the downside, if I become an independent contractor, I'm probably going to lose my health insurance, which Boardwalk pays for. It's a benefit, it's a perk, which is needed because law requires that we have health insurance now. So that's a huge expense that I don't have to foot the bill for. It's a big a benefit that the company offers. I put a lot of time and effort into getting my designation for NARPM, for my residential management professional designation, and I'm there. All I need to do is finish the paperwork and submit it, and I've actually kind of been holding off on it because I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it, and I didn't want to waste any more time or money on, and it's not my money, it's Steve's money, because Steve has paid for everything for that, with the exception of no exceptions. I did pay for some things out of pocket for my real estate license, but for the most part Steve paid for all that as well, as the company that sponsors me. So part of me doesn't want to walk away from that, but I would have to be a property manager to be able to do that. And stepping out of the property management role, even if I was still affiliated and doing something along those lines, I wouldn't be qualified to get my designation. So that seems like kind of a waste, especially since everything that's been put into it. It sounds selfish, but we have the NARPM National Conferences in Hawaii this year. I've been looking forward to that for 3 years, and now it's 6 months away, and do I want to call it quits and walk away before that? But is it fair to Steve to not say anything and stick around long enough to be able to take that trip and have that experience, only to shift or change my position after the fact? And for me, honesty is the best policy. I'm always going to try and be honest, even if it's detrimental to my own personal benefit, which it has been in the past. I have been honest to a fault at times, and it's cost me, and I'm just going to have to roll the dice on that. So at some point when I'm talking to Steve, I'm going to need to mention that. When I started the year, what I wanted to do was shift into doing these recordings, shift into more of an interactional phase and start interacting with other people, especially people that are in the same line of work or industry, and transition myself into being able to do that for a living. And my hope was that by the time the Hawaiian NARPM conference rolled around, that I would be going as a speaker and being paid to do it. And I'm still holding on to that as a possibility and a hope, but the further we get into the year and the closer we get to that, and not having had any drastic changes in my course, it's starting to feel less likely to happen, and I don't want to let doubt affect my outlook and my outcome. So I'm trying to overcome that and stay focused on what I'm trying to do, because realistically it would only take a day for things to change like that. In my mind, it feels like it's going to be much more of a intense, drug out transition, but it really could happen as quickly as that. It would just take one person to notice. It would just take me sharing what I'm doing right now with a few people and having that spread to make a difference. But it also hinges on my decisions right now, what I'm doing. The last couple of weeks I've been recording and just basically whining about how unhappy I am and not knowing what to do about it. And I was really starting to feel discouraged yesterday when I recorded. I went home and I processed that, and I didn't even do it right away. I wasn't even sure if I was going to save that recording yesterday because of how depressing it was. And I don't want to share that with anybody. I don't want to make that available for other people to see and to experience unless I can make a difference. And I did note that. I noted that when I was recording that if all of what I'm doing over the last couple of weeks and what I've been feeling, if I don't make a change for the better, then there is no point in sharing any of this. And now that I've kind of feel like some of that pressure is lifted and I don't feel so constricted today, I'm seeing again the benefit of those down cycles. And when you're in them, it's really hard to see any kind of benefit, and it's easy to fall into the trap of being like, this is it, all right, and making decisions that will impact the rest of your life based on those periods. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't make any hasty decisions over the last couple of weeks that could have created a larger hole for me to have to crawl out of. So good. And anyway, back to it could be just a matter of now that I'm feeling like I am today, and I feel like I can create more of a positive body of work and show how to overcome some of the obstacles that we face in our lives as far as pursuing happiness and pursuing our dreams. Let's see if I can remember which house this one is. It is a 2-story. I don't think it's that one. I think it might be this one. It is this one. So, again, and it's going to come down to my perception and how I continue to move forward and perceive what is happening in my life, and continue to try and make decisions to continue to move forward and make those decisions based on positive situations and not make them rooted in some of those potentially negative situations. So the last couple weeks, while very uncomfortable, very unhappy, borderline miserable, keeping an eye out for the next available opening was crucial, and I feel like I've reached that point, and I have no idea how long this is going to last, or what the circumstances are behind me feeling unusually hopeful, unusual compared to the last couple of weeks. But in doing that and in recording and being unhappy the last several weeks and showing that, even though it's somewhat embarrassing and awkward and uncomfortable, and it's something that you don't want to share because it feels like it's showing yourself at your weakest, if you can rebound and recover from that, that's what can motivate others, because everybody at some point will fall into one of those situations, will be subject to those down cycles in their life where they just don't know what to do, where to turn, what decisions to make, and it doesn't seem like anything is ever going to be good again. And that's what I'm coming out of and hoping to move forward on, and how can I build on that. I've looked at restaurant jobs. I've looked at the possibility of opening some kind of a food truck, but again, there's a lot of risk associated in that, and a lot of work. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm lazy, because, well, to a certain point, I guess I am, because if I was really willing to or really wanted to do that, I'd be willing to put in the work. And at this point, I've gotten accustomed to having a certain amount of flexibility. And to me, the restaurant industry is a full-time commitment, and it's, 24 hours a day. And right now, I'm committed to Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with some intermittent things that I may have to deal with or address on a weekend or a night. And even to me right now, that seems excessive. I was sitting there while I was driving to work this morning, and I was calculating. That's 9 hours a day, Monday through Friday, that I have blocked out. We get an hour for lunch, but that's basically 9 hours that are considered work hours. And as I recently talked about, I try to get about 8 hours of sleep. So 17 hours of a 24-hour day that are already committed to something else, and with the exception of weekends, 17 hours a day for 5 days a week that are committed to either sleeping or to work hours. And then you factor in about an hour of wind down time in the evening, that's on average for me, and an hour of get ready time in the morning, 19 hours. So that's 5 hours a day for 5 days a week that I have free to do other things. Work on hobbies, work on exercising, things around the house, rest and relaxation, and watching movies, watching TV, doing whatever it is I do. That's 5 hours a day, and that's really, you have to take out some time to eat, transportation time, driving to and from wherever you're going. So you've got a handful of hours in a day, or I do right now, and that to me seems unacceptable. It just seems like in the course of living a life, that is not time well spent. Now when you shift it and go into the idea of work ethic and commitment and the concept of laziness and the idea of earning a living, it doesn't seem so bad. But from the perspective of trying to enjoy life and what we're intended to do as human beings, that seems like a huge waste of time. Because when it comes to the end, and you transition out of this existence in whatever way that you do that, those 5 days a week of only taking a handful of hours a day to enjoy life, you're going to feel like you missed something. I already feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I have missed something, and I'm only 44. And I want to make a change before I get to the end of my life. I'm watching Steve and Linda now do things that they've always wanted to do their whole lives. They're in their 60s. I'm 20 years behind them. And I'm like, I don't want to wait till the end of my days when my health is possibly deteriorating or my body is failing in one way or another due to the way that I've lived my life or the choices that I've made, and maybe not to be able to fully enjoy the things that they're doing now. And I see them struggling. I see Linda in her pictures with her knee brace on, and I know she's experiencing pain and discomfort when she travels, and it's she's associated to her age and the life that she's lived. And she worked hard for years and years and years and years and committed a lot of time to her job, which she loved, So she took a certain amount of satisfaction from that, but now she's trying to see the world and do things from a bucket list approach. And again, when it comes to quality of life, how much are you enjoying those things with the physical discomforts that you are having to experience? And I'm using them as specific examples just because they're the closest ones to me that are giving me some contrast and the ability to demonstrate what I'm talking about. But I don't want to have to wait to do that. I want it now. And that's not an unreasonable request. But in order to do them now, I'm going to have to make changes, because I'm not going to be able to do them with the salary that I make now. And right now, I was looking back at the difference, the contrast from where we were 5 years ago in the Quad Cities, living in my grandparents' old house, barely making the mortgage payment, barely making the car payments, barely covering our utility bills, being 1 or 2 days a month off from being disconnected from our power or our cell phones every month. That's how we were living every month. We were already 30 days behind on everything, so every month we were already late starting the month, and if for some reason something came up and we weren't going to be able to pay it, we were looking at the possibility of having things shut off. And the good thing was we had just filed bankruptcy, so we had very little debt, but we had very little income also, and we were trying to make choices, and we scrapped everything, and we made the trip cross country with a few things in a trailer and what we could fit in the car, and we started over. And the difference between where we were then and where we are now is tremendous. And for anybody else, I think that could possibly be considered a successful life. Me, I have higher standards for what I'm trying to do, because I believe I have a higher purpose that I'm trying to reach, which is different than what most people will have to deal with. And I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that. So where do I go now? Right now, I guess I need to go inside this house and take some pictures and put a sign in the yard and go back to the office and list it on the market. But it's been a good day. It's been a good recording. I'm happy with what I've gotten out there. I'm very optimistic about my immediate future for the first time in a few weeks. Very optimistic about my future in general, and that feels good. And for the first time in a few weeks, I feel like I can breathe right now. I feel like I've got some room to move, and don't feel like I'm being crushed, which is great. And there's been several of these cycles over the last few months or year, but this one seemed to be the most intense. And there were periods over the last couple of weeks where I just wanted to give up, and I'm glad I persevered. I'm glad I pushed through it, and hopefully that's inspirational to others that get in those situations, because I know when you're going through it, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. But when that breath of hope comes in, it's well worth it making it through that. So that's it.